Hola clase, hoy vamos a hablar de los verbos tener y venir. Today we're going to talk about the verbs tener and venir. I know this is a review for most of you. If you have these notes in your spirals already, go ahead and look for those and you can just add to them. If you don't have these notes or can't find them, you need to be writing these things down because you will need these later for your practice. Okay, so let's start with the verb tener first. Okay, we know the verb tener means to have. And the reason why we talk about tener and venir together is not because they mean the same thing. It's because they're conjugated very similarly. Tener means to have, venir means to come or to come back from somewhere. And when we conjugate them, notice that tener is an ER verb, so I use my ER endings, and venir is an IR verb, so I use my IR endings. But where they're similar is that they're both yogo verbs, and they are both stem changers in the rest of the forms, except nosotros and vosotros, which we know never stem change. And they take this E right here, and we change the E to an IE when we conjugate all forms except the yo, because it's a yogo verb, and then also the nosotros and the vosotros. So let's conjugate tener. Let's make your subject box. Okay, and think about your pronouns. Okay, this box here would be yo, right? You can fill in those pronouns if you want. For tener, I say yo tengo, tú tienes. Notice how it's stem change, IE, ES, because it's an ER verb, tener. Él, ella, usted tiene. Nosotros tenemos. Notice how I don't stem change because nosotros and vosotros never stem change. And tenéis. And I have an accent mark over the E. And then tienen. Pause this if you need to get these in your notes. Okay, now let's conjugate the verb venir. We'll do the same thing. We'll draw our box. And it's very similar to tener. So in the yo form, I say yo vengo. Yo vengo a mi casa a las 4. I come home at 4 o'clock. Vengo. Tú vienes. Notice, just like tener, I changed the E to an IE. And it's an ES because it's an IR verb. Remember our endings for IR verbs? OS, imos, isen. El, ella, usted viene. Nosotros venimos. Nosotros venimos al partido a las 5. We come to the game at 5 o'clock. Venís. Notice, venimos, venís, because it's an IR verb. And ellos, ellas, ustedes vienen. Again, pause this slide if you need to make sure you have all these spelled correctly. Okay, so that was about the verbs tener and venir and how to just basically conjugate them. Let's talk real quick about those tener expressions that we use. I feel like some of us still are kind of confused on those tener expressions, so let's talk about them right quick. Tener we know means to have, but sometimes in Spanish we use what the book calls tener expressions or tener idioms, like a way to say something other than you might think it would be said. Like some of you think about telling your age, like instead of saying I am 15 years old or whatever, you say yo tengo 15 años. You say I have, and so that's one example of a tener idiom. But the tener expressions that we need to know, the tener idioms that we should know by now are tener sed, to be thirsty. Make sure you get these and the definitions in your notes. Tener sed, to be thirsty. Tener hambre, to be hungry. Tener prisa, to be in a hurry. Tener ganas de, plus an infinitive, means you feel like doing something. And the reason why we say plus an infinitive is because you need to say an infinitive there, like something that you feel like doing. Like yo tengo ganas de bailar, I feel like dancing. I would use an infinitive here to say what I plan on doing. And then tener que, plus infinitive, to say what you have to do. Like, yo tengo que bailar, I have to dance. Okay, tener sed, tener hambre, tener prisa, tener ganas de plus infinitive, tener que plus infinitive. We need to know these. We're going to be learning some more tener expressions later on in the year, and we need to really have a good grasp of these 5. Make sure that you know with tener expressions that I don't just use the verb tener. I have to conjugate the verb tener to fit whoever I'm talking about. So I am thirsty, yo tengo sed. You are thirsty, tú tienes sed. And I just use this sed after the conjugated verb of tener. Last thing we're going to talk about today is the verb venir with a time expression. Okay, you watched the video about telling time already, and Senor Jordan talked to you about how when you say what time it is, you say something like son las 4, like it is 4 o'clock, son las 4. And we use son because son is, we always use ser with time, number 1, and son is plural, and so is 4, so I want to make them plural together. Son las 4, it's 4 o'clock. And he talked to you about how we use es if it's 1, es la una, it's 1 o'clock. Son las 4, es la una. But when we talk about time expressions with the verb venir, most likely we want to say that something's happening at a certain time. So instead of saying it is 4 o'clock, I might want to say like I come home at 4 o'clock. And you may have heard my examples earlier. I would say something like yo vengo a mi casa a las 4. Notice I didn't say yo vengo a mi casa son las 4. Yo vengo a mi casa a las 4. So with the time expression and the verb venir, venir plus a plus time. This a means at. Okay, and we've learned a couple of other prepositions that mean at, but I use a with like a plus a pronoun with me gusta. I know I use it with that, like a mí me gusta, but I also use it with time to say at. So if I say something like yo vengo a la escuela a las 8. I come to school at 8 o'clock. If I said yo vengo a la escuela son las 8, I'm saying I come to school, it is 8 o'clock. And then I'm kind of making 2 different sentences instead of saying I come to school at 8 o'clock. So we use a to say at what time. So a with the time expression to say at that specific time something's going to happen. Make sure you have these things in your notes and you can work on the practice worksheets. Alright guys, your tarea for today, or for tonight as well, Miss Cottrell is going to give you 2 practice sheets, and one's about vocabulary and then about the grammar that we've been practicing. If you don't finish in class, you're going to need to finish for homework. Please work quietly. I don't mind if you ask someone around you quietly to help you if you get stuck. You know that's the rule, but we're not going to work in a big group. Please work alone so I can make sure you understand the material. Go back this weekend and watch these videos. I'm going to post them to my blog just in case you have forgotten the information or need to redo the notes. We will be checking these practice sheets as well as the notes in class on Monday.